3,000 years ago, the greatest war of the ancient world was won, not with swords, but with a single wooden horse. This is the story of the Trojan War. Across the sea stood Troy, a magnificent city, ringed by walls so high and so strong that no army had ever broken through. It all began at a wedding of the gods, where a single golden apple appeared, marked with two words, "For the fairest." Three goddesses each claimed it as their own, and their quarrel could not be settled, so they searched for someone to choose between them. They chose Paris, a young prince of Troy, and the goddess Aphrodite whispered a promise, "Choose me, and I will give you the most beautiful woman in the world." Paris chose her, and that promise was Helen, whom he brought home across the sea to Troy. But Helen's people, the Greeks, were furious. Their kings swore a mighty oath they would sail to Troy and bring her home. And so 1,000 ships set sail, the largest army the world had ever seen, led by the proud king Agamemnon. They landed on the shores of Troy and built their camp. But those great walls would not fall easily. The siege would last 10 long years. Among the Greeks was their greatest warrior, Achilles. No weapon could ever seem to wound him, and there was a secret reason why. When Achilles was just a baby, his mother had dipped him in a magical river to make his body invincible. But she held him by one heel, and that single spot where her fingers gripped stayed unprotected. Remember that heel. Defending Troy was its bravest prince, Hector. Honorable and fearless, he was the city's greatest protector. But early in the war, a bitter quarrel broke out. King Agamemnon insulted Achilles, and in his anger, the great warrior refused to fight at all. Without Achilles, the Greeks began to lose. The Trojans drove them back all the way to their ships by the sea. So Achilles' dearest friend Patroclus put on Achilles' own armor and rode out to give the Greeks hope. But Hector mistook him for Achilles, and in the battle, brave Patroclus fell. When Achilles heard the news, his grief turned to fury. He put on new armor and returned to war to avenge his friend. At last, the two mightiest heroes met face to face before the walls of Troy. The whole world seemed to hold its breath. After a fierce and noble battle, Achilles won. Troy had lost its greatest defender, and the whole city mourned. That night, Troy's old king Priam crept alone into the enemy camp and begged Achilles to return his son's body. And Achilles, remembering his own lost friend, was moved to mercy. Even in war, there was room for kindness. But the war was not over. Paris raised his bow, and guided by fate, his arrow flew toward Achilles' one weak spot, his heel. And so even mighty Achilles fell. This is where we get the phrase, an Achilles heel, a single hidden weakness. 10 years had passed. Great heroes on both sides were gone, yet the walls of Troy still stood. The Greeks were losing hope. Then the cleverest of all the Greeks, a king named Odysseus, had a brilliant and cunning idea. They built an enormous horse out of wood, hollow inside, and quietly their bravest soldiers climbed in and hid within it. The rest of the army sailed away, leaving the giant horse outside the gates, a gift it seemed, and a sign the Greeks had given up. Overjoyed, the Trojans pulled the horse inside their walls and celebrated long into the night, certain they had finally won. But as the city slept, the hidden soldiers crept out of the horse and opened the great gates of Troy from the inside. The Greek army had never truly left. They poured into the city, and after 10 long years, Troy finally fell. And so a single clever trick ended the greatest war of legend. But for one Greek hero, Odysseus, the journey home was only beginning. Ahead of him lay 10 more years of fierce storms, strange monsters, and the wrath of the gods themselves. And far away in Ithaca, his faithful wife Penelope waited, wondering if he would ever return. Could the cleverest hero of all find his way home? That story is the Odyssey, and it begins in our very next episode. If you enjoyed this, subscribe and follow so you do not miss it.